There is a particular kind of love that asks nothing in return, not because the person giving it has no needs, every human being has needs, but because somewhere along the way, through years of practice and devotion and the slow, complete surrender of a mother's heart, the giving became so total that the asking stopped feeling like something that belonged to them. Dorothy Bennett had that kind of love. She gave it to one person for 37 years. And that person, her son Nathan, her only child, the whole reason she had restructured her entire life around something outside herself, forgot. Not all at once, not cruelly or not intentionally, but completely. Dorothy lives in a small house in Springfield, Illinois, and she has lived there for 22 years. The same house she moved into when Nathan was 12 and she needed something stable and affordable and close enough to a good school that she could walk him there in the mornings. She still lives there alone. The neighborhood has changed around her. The school Nathan attended is now a community center. The oak tree in the front yard that he used to climb has grown so large it shadows the whole front of the house in summer. Dorothy tends her garden. She volunteers on Tuesdays at the library. She has a cat named Arthur who regards her with the magnificent indifference of a creature that has decided it is doing her a favor by staying. She is, in all the visible ways, fine. But on the Sunday evenings when the phone does not ring and the week closes without a call from her son, Dorothy sits in the chair by the window and looks out at the oak tree. And she is, in ways that no one who loves her has been quite close enough to see, not fine at all. This is her story, and it is eventually his. Nathan's father left when Nathan was 3. Dorothy has never spoken about this with bitterness. Not to Nathan, not to anyone. It is simply a fact that she folded into the architecture of her life and built around. Some things you cannot change, you can only decide what kind of person you're going to be in response to them. Dorothy decided to be the kind of person who does not let her child feel the weight of things that are not his fault. She worked as a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing firm for 19 years. Steady work, decent pay, the kind of job that requires precision and reliability and delivers neither excitement nor complaint. She was good at it. She did it without drama. She brought home the paycheck every 2 weeks, and she managed it with the careful, patient arithmetic of a woman who knew exactly what each dollar had to do and made certain it did it. Nathan grew up understanding that money was to be respected rather than spent carelessly, that things worth having required work, and that the person who had provided everything he had done so without making him feel the cost of it. This is no small thing to give a child. The absence of burden is itself a gift, and Dorothy gave it generously, invisibly, every day of his childhood. She went to every baseball game, every school play, every science fair and parent-teacher conference, and the uncomfortable plastic chair assemblies that schools hold for reasons that are never entirely clear, but that Dorothy attended without complaint because Nathan was in them and that was enough. She helped him with homework in the evenings after long days at work, sitting at the kitchen table with the patience of someone who understood that the homework mattered not because algebra would define his life, but because doing hard things together was how you showed a child that hard things were survivable. When he was accepted to the University of Illinois, full scholarship, the result of 4 years of grades that Dorothy had supported through every late study night and every test week dinner and every quiet encouragement that never tipped into pressure, she sat in her car in the parking lot of his high school and cried for 20 minutes. Not from relief, from pride so complete it had nowhere to go but out. Nathan graduated. He moved to Chicago for work. He called every Sunday, long calls, real calls, the kind where they talked about everything and nothing and the comfortable, easy way of two people who know each other well enough to not need a reason to talk. Dorothy drove to Chicago every couple of months. Nathan drove back to Springfield when he could. It was good. It was genuinely, warmly good. And then, at 32, Nathan met Heather at a work conference in Milwaukee, and the tide began, slowly and without announcement, to go out. Heather was, by every visible measure, a good match for Nathan. She was sharp and organized and had the particular competence of a person who has always known what they wanted and pursued it efficiently. She came from a large family in Michigan. 4 siblings, parents who were still together and still present in her adult life in the weekly, involved way of families that have never found the idea of closeness threatening. She was used to family as infrastructure, is the constant assumed background of a life. Her family was loud and warm and completely absorbing. And Nathan, who had grown up as Dorothy's only child in the quiet of a small Springfield house, found himself folded into all of that warmth with a completeness that was, Dorothy understood, genuinely wonderful for him. If she understood this, she told herself she understood this, she was glad that he had found someone good and a family that welcomed him and a life that was full and warm and real. But the Sunday calls became shorter. Not immediately. Gradually, a few minutes trimmed here, a week skipped there, the easy, unhurried quality of their conversations replaced by something more like a check-in. Brief, functional, the kind of call you make because it is on the list rather than because you cannot wait to hear the voice on the other end. The visits to Springfield became annual rather than frequent, then less than annual. Heather's family's events, and there were many of them, spread across the year with the cheerful density of a large family's calendar, began to occupy the weekends that had once been available for the drive south. Dorothy did not complain. She understood, or told herself she understood, that a young man building a new life and a new marriage and a new set of family obligations did not have infinite time. She told herself this firmly, and she believed it firmly, and she continued to make the drive to Chicago when she could, and she continued to bring the things she knew Nathan loved: the banana bread he had eaten his entire life, the particular brand of coffee he could never find in the city, small things, mother things, and she continued to be entirely, cheerfully present in the visits that she had driven 3 hours to attend. But she noticed. She noticed that Heather's family was discussed in their conversations with a detail and a frequency that she was not discussed in. She noticed that the weekends Nathan and Heather took were often weekends with Heather's parents, Heather's siblings, Heather's nieces and nephews, who were growing up in the warm, photographed way of children who see their extended family constantly. She noticed that she had not met Heather's parents in 3 years of her son's marriage, though she understood they saw Nathan and Heather several times a year. She noticed that she was becoming, in the life her son was living, a peripheral figure, not erased, not hated, not even consciously sidelined, simply peripheral. The way things become peripheral when they are not actively brought to the center, when the forgetting is not malicious, but is, in its own way, complete. Dorothy noticed all of this, and she said nothing, not because she had no voice, but because she had spent 37 years making certain that Nathan never felt that her love was a burden, and she was not, at 63 years old, going to start making it one now. Nathan and Heather had a daughter. Her name was Lily. She was born when Nathan was 35, which made Dorothy a grandmother at 62, an event she received with a joy that was, for a woman not given to loud expressions of feeling, remarkably loud. She drove to Chicago the day after Lily was born. She held her granddaughter in the hospital room for one careful, extraordinary hour, and she looked at this small new person and felt something she had thought she might not feel again: the particular, overwhelming love of the first moment. The love that asks nothing. The love that simply is. She went home to Springfield and she made things. And she knitted, she bought books, she prepared the spare room in ways that suggested she fully expected to be a present grandmother, the kind who is called when the babysitter cancels, who shows up for the ordinary Tuesday rather than only for the birthday. But the calls for the ordinary Tuesdays did not come. Lily grew. Dorothy watched her grow in photographs posted online and in the annual visits that Nathan managed, and in the occasional video call that lasted 20 minutes, and featured Lily at her most performative and Nathan at his most distracted, and Heather occasionally visible in the background, always polite, always just slightly elsewhere. And then came the Sunday. Lily was 4 years old. It was an ordinary Sunday. Nathan and Heather and Lily at home in Chicago. The kind of slow family Sunday that small children make necessary. Nathan was making pancakes. Lily was at the kitchen table with her crayons. Heather was somewhere else in the house. Lily looked up from her drawing and said, "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma Dorothy come to our house?" Nathan turned from the stove. "What do you mean?" he said. "Grandma Karen comes every month," Lily said. Grandma Karen was Heather's mother. And Grandpa Jim. They came last weekend and the weekend before, but Grandma Dorothy doesn't come. Does she not like us? Nathan stood at the stove with a spatula in his hand and his 4-year-old daughter's question in the air between them, and he had no answer. Not because the answer was complicated, but because the answer was simple in a way that required him to see something he had been not seeing for 3 years. Grandma Dorothy didn't come because nobody invited her. Nobody had made space for her. Nobody had put her in the calendar the way Grandma Karen was in the calendar. Nobody had built the rhythm of her presence into the structure of their life. His mother, yeah, the woman who had sat at a kitchen table helping him with homework after 12-hour days, who had driven 3 hours to his hospital room the day Lily was born, who still made banana bread and drove it to Chicago because she did not want to arrive empty-handed at a home where she was not entirely certain she was wanted, had been forgotten, not with cruelty, with the quiet, terrible carelessness of a son who had been so absorbed in the warmth of the life he was building that he had not noticed the person standing outside it in the cold. Nathan turned off the stove. He told Lily the pancakes would be ready in a few minutes, and he walked into the hallway and he sat down on the bottom stair and he called his mother. Dorothy answered on the second ring. She always answered quickly. She was always available, always reachable, always there in the way of someone who has no reason to screen calls from the people she loves. "Nathan," she said warmly. No reproach in it. She never had reproach in her voice when he called, regardless of how long it had been. He said, "Well, Mom, when did you last come to our house?" A pause. "You came to me in October," she said carefully. I haven't been to Chicago since Lily's second birthday, I think. 2 years. 2 years since his mother had been in his home." He sat on the bottom stair with that information. "I'm sorry," he said. Dorothy was quiet for a moment, and then she said the thing that she had been not saying for 3 years. Not because she was finally breaking. Dorothy Bennett did not break easily, but because her son had finally asked a real question and she owed him a real answer. She said, "Nathan, I want you to know that I understand. I understand that your life is full and your family's wonderful and Heather's family's close and present, and I'm 3 hours away. I understand all of that, but I want you to also know, and I say this because you asked, not to make you feel guilty. I want you to know that there are Sundays when I sit in the chair by the window and I miss you so much it feels like something physical, like an actual weight. And I have never told you that because I did not want to be the kind of mother who makes her love feel like a burden. But it is true. It has been true for a long time." Nathan was silent for a long time after that. When he spoke, his voice had changed. The easy, slightly distracted quality that had characterized their recent calls was gone. He sounded, Dorothy thought, like himself, like the Nathan who used to call on Sunday evenings and talk about everything and nothing and not need a reason. "I'm coming this weekend," he said. "Just me and Lily, if that's okay." "It's always okay," Dorothy said. And it was. It always had been. They arrived on Saturday morning, Nathan with Lily strapped into her car seat and a bag of things that 4-year-olds require even for a single night. The particular blanket, the specific stuffed elephant, the cup that is the right cup, and not any of the other cups. The 3-hour drive from Chicago to Springfield had apparently been filled with Lily asking questions about Grandma Dorothy's house and Grandma Dorothy's garden and whether Grandma Dorothy had a cat. She does, Nathan had told her. His name is Arthur. Does Arthur like children? Lily had asked. I don't know, Nathan had said honestly. Arthur doesn't like very many people. Arthur, as it turned out, was indifferent to Lily in the specific way of cats who have decided that a small human is beneath their concern, but not worth the energy of active avoidance. Lily interpreted this as approval and spent most of Saturday morning following him around Dorothy's house with a patient and determined devotion that Arthur bore with magnificent resignation. Dorothy and Nathan sat at the kitchen table, the same kitchen table where she had helped him with algebra, where he had eaten every breakfast of his childhood, where the surface still had the particular worn quality of wood that has been a place of daily life for decades. They talked, not in the careful, compressed way of their recent phone calls, in the old way. The Sunday evening way, long and unhurried and ranging across everything. His work, her garden, Lily's opinions about everything, Heather, the neighborhood, his father briefly and honestly, at the oak tree in the front yard that had grown so enormous it now dominated the entire front of the house. Nathan said, I've been thinking about what you said on the phone about the Sundays. Dorothy waited. I didn't know, he said. That sounds like an excuse, and I understand if it sounds like one, but I got so absorbed in the life we were building, in Heather's family who are right there, who are always just right there. And you were always fine. Every time I called, you were fine. And I believed it because I wanted to believe it, because believing it was easier. Dorothy looked at her son across the kitchen table. I know, she said. That is partly my fault. I was so determined not to be a burden that I made myself easy to overlook. I have been thinking about that too. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. You could never be a burden, Mom, he said. Not to me. Never to me. Dorothy reached across the table and put her hand over his. She held it there for a while. In the next room, Lily was explaining something important to Arthur, who was listening with the expression of a philosopher encountering a thought too simple to fully engage with. Dorothy and Nathan stayed at the table until Lily appeared in the doorway to announce that Arthur had walked away and she required pancakes, and could Grandma Dorothy please make the ones with the blueberries, because she had heard they were very good. Dorothy got up, she made the pancakes. And in the kitchen that smelled of blueberries and coffee and 37 years of a love that had never once been conditional, something that had been quietly broken for 3 years began, without ceremony, to mend. The karma in this story arrived in the form of a 4-year-old girl's question. Not thunder, not ruin, not a dramatic moment of public reckoning. A child at a kitchen table with her crayons asking in the simple, direct way of children who have not yet learned to be tactful about things that are simply true. Why doesn't Grandma Dorothy come to our house? Karma does not always require catastrophe. Sometimes it requires only clarity, a question simple enough that it cannot be rationalized around, a moment of seeing something that has been in plain sight fully for the first time. Nathan could not unknown what Lily's question had shown him, the image of his mother in the chair by the window on Sunday evenings, the 2 years since she had been in his home, the banana bread she still brought on her visits, still arriving not empty-handed, still trying. He could not unknown any of it, and so he drove to Springfield. Dorothy is in Chicago now every 6 weeks. Not because it was negotiated or requested formally, but because Nathan put it in the calendar the way Grandma Karen is in the calendar, a rhythm, a structure, a place that is held for her rather than left to chance and assumed to be unnecessary. Heather, to her credit, did not resist this. She had not understood, Dorothy thinks, how fully she had been absent from Nathan's mind on this particular matter. When Nathan explained, not as an accusation, but as a recognition, Heather had been quiet and then said, I didn't realize. I should have. I'm sorry. 3 words, simply said, enough to begin with. Lily calls Dorothy every Sunday now, not Nathan, Lily, because Lily decided after the Springfield weekend that Grandma Dorothy was her person, and she was going to treat her accordingly. The calls are short and entirely composed of Lily's opinions about her week and Arthur's behavior and whether blueberry pancakes are better than regular ones. Dorothy takes every call. She always answers quickly. She always has time. There is something that happens to good mothers. The better they are, the more completely they love, the more invisibly they sacrifice, the more carefully they avoid becoming a burden, the more invisible they become. Not because the people around them do not love them, but because a love that never asks is easy to forget to give back to, because a presence that is always steady becomes background, because the person who is always fine gives everyone else permission to believe it. Dorothy Bennett is not a saint. She is a human being who made a choice decades ago to love one person completely and without condition, and who paid for that completeness by being, for a few years, easy to overlook. But she's also a woman who told the truth when her son finally asked. And that truth, those sentences about the Sunday evenings and the chair by the window and the weight that felt physical, changed something that needed to be changed. If you are a son or a daughter who is listening to this, who recognizes something in Nathan's story, in the absorbed busyness of a life so full of present people that the person 3 hours away became background, I want to ask you something. When did you last call your mother? Not a check-in, not a quick call between things, a real call. Did the kind that has no agenda and no end time and no distracted quality. The kind where you ask how she is and then wait for the true answer instead of the fine. Because she is probably fine. She has spent her whole life practicing fine. But underneath fine, if you ask the right way and give her room to answer, there may be something else. Something she has been carrying so that you wouldn't have to. Ask her. Tonight. Before Lily's question becomes your question. Before the chair by the window becomes the whole of her Sunday evening. This is Soul Tales, and somewhere in Springfield, Illinois, on a Sunday morning, a phone is ringing. Dorothy answers before the second ring. She always does, because for 37 years, the most important call of her life has been from the same number. And she has never once not been ready to receive it.